The crisp autumn wind whistled through the busy streets of Chicago as 25-year-old Maya Chen hurried through the hospital's sliding doors, her worn navy backpack slung over her shoulder. The emergency room buzzed with its usual mix of urgency and controlled chaos, a place where she felt most at home, despite everything life had thrown at her. As she tied her curly black hair back and slipped into her scrubs, Maya caught a glimpse of the small crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist. It was the only physical connection she had to her past, along with a weathered photograph tucked safely in her locker. The photo, torn right down the middle, showed a smiling woman holding a baby. The other half remained a mystery, just like the rest of her story. The morning shift began like any other, with Maya moving from patient to patient with practiced efficiency. Her colleagues often wondered how someone so young could handle the pressure of the ER with such grace. What they didn't know was that Maya had been handling pressure her whole life, ever since she was found wrapped in a blanket outside a fire station on a cold winter night. Between treating a teenager with a skateboarding injury and an elderly man with chest pain, Maya's mind wandered to the series of foster homes that had shaped her childhood. The Roberts family, who taught her to love reading. The Paddles, who introduced her to the joy of cooking spicy curries. The Thompsons, who encouraged her to pursue nursing. Each home had added a layer to who she was, but none could fill the void of not knowing where she came from. Mrs. Rodriguez, one of the regular nurses who had taken Maya under her wing, noticed her lost in thought. "Mi amor, your patients can feel your kindness," she said, squeezing Maya's shoulder. "Whatever made you who you are, it created something beautiful." Maya smiled, grateful for the reminder. She had learned to channel her past into understanding her patients better. When scared children came in, she knew exactly how to comfort them. When lonely elderly patients needed someone to talk to, she could listen with genuine empathy. Her background hadn't just made her stronger, it had made her better at her job. During her lunch break, Maya sat in the hospital garden, unwrapping her homemade sandwich. She pulled out the old photograph, studying it for the 1,000th time. The woman in the picture had the same crescent birthmark on her wrist. Sometimes Maya imagined she could remember her mother's laugh, though she knew it was probably just her mind trying to fill in the blanks. A group of new interns passed by, their excited chatter about their futures floating through the air. Maya remembered being in their shoes 3 years ago, determined to prove herself. Now, at 25, she had become one of the most respected nurses in the emergency department. Her colleagues valued her quick thinking and steady hands, but what they appreciated most was her ability to stay calm in crisis situations. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden, Maya's pager buzzed. Another emergency was coming in. She tucked the photograph away and headed back inside, her steps purposeful. In the ER, she was no longer the abandoned girl searching for answers. She was a skilled professional, turning her own experience of uncertainty into a gift for others. The day wound down with Maya finishing her charts, her handwriting neat and precise, a habit she'd developed in foster care, where being organized meant being noticed. As she prepared to hand over to the night shift, she couldn't shake the feeling that had been growing stronger lately. Something was about to change. Maybe it was the way the stars aligned differently in the evening sky, or how the city seemed to hold its breath just a little longer between moments. Little did Maya know, as she gathered her things to head home, that fate had already set in motion a series of events that would answer the questions she'd carried her whole life. The universe, in its mysterious way, was about to show her that sometimes the longest journeys lead exactly where you need to go. The sleek glass tower of Chen Healthcare stood proudly against the Chicago skyline, but its true leader was nowhere to be seen. On the top floor, behind a hidden door in what appeared to be a storage room, Adrian Chen sat surrounded by monitors, running one of the city's largest healthcare companies from the shadows. At 32, Adrian had already revolutionized hospital management systems across the Midwest, but few people knew his face. His office, if you could call it that, was a perfect reflection of his current life. Functional, hidden, and lonely. A half-empty cup of green tea sat cooling beside his keyboard, forgotten during yet another video conference where he used voice only, his camera perpetually broken. Today's meeting was about acquiring a struggling hospital on the city's south side. While his board members spoke about profit margins, Adrian's attention kept drifting to a small wooden box on his desk. Inside lay the other half of a torn photograph, a man holding a baby girl. His fingers absently traced the crescent-shaped birthmark on his wrist, identical to the one the baby in the photo had. "Mr. Chen." His assistant's voice through the intercom snapped him back to reality. "The security team has updated the threat assessment report." Adrian sighed, minimizing the hospital acquisition documents on his screen. The threats had started 3 months ago, first as encrypted emails, then as mysterious packages delivered to his private residence. Someone had discovered his true identity, and they were using his search for his long-lost sister as leverage. Between meetings, he pulled up the latest research his private investigators had gathered. 25 years ago, during a hostile takeover of his parents' original healthcare company, chaos had erupted. In the confusion, his baby sister had disappeared. The official story claimed she had died in the accident that killed their parents, but Adrian had never believed it. The lack of records, the missing body, something hadn't added up. His phone buzzed. Another anonymous message. "Found something interesting about Chicago Fire Station number 23, winter of 1999. Adrian's heart raced. That was the year, the city. Could it be? But experience had taught him caution. Each lead so far had been a carefully laid trap, designed to draw him out of hiding. Through his office window, he watched the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. Sometimes he wondered what his life would be like if he could walk freely through those streets, attend charity galas in person instead of sending representatives, or simply grab coffee from the shop across the street without worrying about being followed. The security footage from his building's lobby flashed across one of his screens. Employees heading home for the day, their faces tired but satisfied. Adrian envied their normalcy. His own face hadn't appeared in public since he'd taken control of the company 5 years ago, after discovering attempts to replicate his parents' groundbreaking medical technology patents. A knock on his hidden door made him tense. "Come in," he called, relaxing only when his trusted friend and head of security, Ray, entered. "You should go home, boss," Ray said, noting the untouched lunch on Adrian's desk. "The city's getting dangerous after dark these days." Adrian nodded, but they both knew he wouldn't leave yet. The night offered cover, a chance to dig deeper into records without worry of being traced. Besides, his penthouse apartment felt even lonelier than his hidden office. As Ray left, Adrian opened a new browser window. Fire Station number 23. Maybe this time, the lead wouldn't be another dead end. Maybe this time he'd finally find answers about his sister, about why their parents' company had been targeted, about who was still trying to bury secrets from 25 years ago. The city lights sparkled below like a constellation of earthbound stars. Somewhere out there, Adrian believed, his sister was living her life, probably unaware of her true identity, unaware that her brother had spent years building a corporate fortress just to find her. As another encrypted email arrived in his inbox, he couldn't know that fate was already weaving their paths together, or that the very person he sought had already crossed his company's threshold that very morning. Chicago winters had always been harsh, but this night was different. The weather forecast had warned about the snowstorm, yet nobody expected it to hit with such fury. Maya pulled her worn coat tighter around her scrubs as she left the hospital, declining her coworker's offer for a ride. The short walk home had become her ritual, a moment of peace after the chaos of the emergency room. The wind howled between buildings, turning the falling snow into stinging needles against her face. Street lights created halos in the whiteout conditions, their glow barely reaching the ground. Maya tucked her chin into her scarf, grateful she'd picked up extra shifts this week. The storm had brought a surge of weather-related emergencies, and the ER needed all hands on deck. As she turned down the narrow street that served as her shortcut, something caught her eye. Through the curtain of snow, a dark shape huddled against the wall of the alley. Maya's step faltered. After years in the city, she knew better than to investigate strange shadows in alleyways. But something about this one seemed wrong. A muffled sound carried through the howling wind. Maya's nursing instincts kicked in, overriding her caution. She approached slowly, her phone ready in her pocket. The shape became clearer. A man in an expensive but too thin coat slumped against the brick wall. "Sir, are you all right?" Maya called out, keeping a safe distance. No response. She moved closer, noticing his labored breathing and the way his hands clutched at his throat. Maya recognized the signs immediately. Anaphylactic shock. Without hesitation, she dropped her bag and knelt beside him, her training taking over. "Sir, can you hear me? I'm a nurse. I'm going to help you." She searched his pockets, finding an EpiPen that looked unused. The man's eyes flickered open briefly, revealing fear and confusion before rolling back. Maya's hands moved with practiced efficiency, administering the epinephrine while pulling out her phone to call an ambulance. The storm had worsened, making it hard to even see the building across the street. She knew help would take time to arrive. The man's breathing remained labored, but the medication was working. In the glow of her phone's flashlight, Maya noticed his face seemed young despite his graying temples. His clothes were clearly expensive, though he carried no wallet or phone. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, like a face she might have seen in passing at the hospital. "Stay with me," she urged, monitoring his pulse. "Help is coming." The wind whipped snow around them as she shielded him with her body, her coat now wrapped around his shoulders. His skin felt ice cold. How long had he been out here? Through chattering teeth, the man tried to speak. "Who?" he managed before coughing. "I'm Maya. I work at Central Hospital. You're having a severe allergic reaction, but you're going to be okay." She kept her voice calm and steady, the way she did with all her patients. "Can you tell me your name?" He shook his head slightly, eyes clouding with what looked like panic. Maya noticed something else then, a medical alert bracelet partially hidden under his sleeve. As she reached to check it, her eyes caught a familiar mark on his wrist, barely visible in the dim light, a crescent-shaped birthmark. Her heart skipped a beat, but before she could process what she'd seen, sirens cut through the howling wind. Red and blue lights painted the falling snow in alternating colors as the ambulance approached. The man's eyes had closed again, but his breathing was stronger. As the paramedics took over, Maya found herself reluctant to leave. Something about this moment felt important, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. She gave her report to the emergency team, watching as they loaded him into the ambulance. "Coming?" one of the paramedics asked, knowing she was hospital staff. Maya glanced at the now empty alley, then at the ambulance. The storm seemed to hold its breath. Without fully understanding why, she climbed in. Sometimes, she learned, the most important moments in life came disguised as ordinary choices. As the ambulance pulled away, neither Maya nor her mysterious patient realized that this snowy encounter had just set in motion events that would unravel decades of secrets, all starting with a birthmark and a life-saving dose of epinephrine in a Chicago alley. The hospital corridors seemed different tonight, filled with an energy Maya couldn't quite explain. She'd stayed well past the end of her shift, drawn to the mysterious patient from the alley. He now rested in a private room in the ICU, listed under the name John Chen, a name she suspected wasn't real. Through the glass door, Maya watched the steady rise and fall of his chest. The allergic reaction had been severe, complicated by hypothermia from exposure to the storm. She'd overheard the attending physician mentioning that a few more minutes in that alley could have been fatal. "You should go home," Mrs. Rodriguez said, appearing beside her with a fresh cup of coffee. "You've done your part, mi cielo." But Maya couldn't shake the image of that crescent birthmark. It was identical to hers, down to the tiny notch at the bottom curve. She'd never seen another person with the same mark in all her years of nursing. The patient stirred and Maya found herself walking into the room. His eyes opened slowly, clearer now than in the alley. Something in them seemed haunted, guarded. A man used to hiding. "How are you feeling?" she asked, checking his vitals out of habit. "Better," he replied, his voice hoarse but cultured. "You're the nurse from the alley." Maya nodded, noticing how he carefully kept his wrist covered, though his medical alert bracelet peeked out. "Maya Chen," she introduced herself, watching his expression carefully at the shared surname. No relation to the healthcare company, though. Just a coincidence. A shadow passed across his face, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Thank you," he said simply, "for stopping. Most people wouldn't have." "Most people haven't spent their lives being helped by strangers," Maya replied, surprising herself with her honesty. Something about this man made her want to talk, despite his obvious secrets. He studied her face with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow didn't. "What do you mean?" Maya busied herself adjusting his IV line. "I was abandoned as a baby. Grew up in foster care. Learned that sometimes a stranger's kindness can save your life." She smiled slightly, though usually not quite as literally as tonight. The monitors beeped steadily in the silence that followed. Outside, the storm continued to rage, making the world beyond the hospital windows seem distant and unreal. "I lost my family too," he said finally, his words careful and measured, though in a different way. His hand moved unconsciously to his wrist, drawing Maya's attention back to the hidden birthmark. Before she could say more, Ray, who'd introduced himself as the patient's personal security, appeared at the door. Maya noticed how her patient immediately tensed, his guard rising again like a shield. "The test results are back," Maya said, sensing the moment slipping away. "No permanent damage, but you'll need to be more careful with food allergies. And maybe invest in a warmer coat." He almost smiled at that. "I'll take it under advisement." As Maya left the room, she felt his eyes following her. At the nurse's station, she found herself pulling out the old photograph from her locker, studying it in the fluorescent light. The baby in the picture, the one with the matching birthmark, could it be possible? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the idea. The world wasn't that small, that neat, and yet, as she glanced back at the private room, where her mysterious patient now spoke in hushed tones with his security guard, she couldn't help but feel that something bigger than coincidence was at play. In his room, Adrian Chen watched the nurse walk away, his heart racing with possibilities he'd spent years chasing. On his laptop, hidden from view, a search window displayed an article about Fire Station Number 23 and an abandoned baby girl, dated exactly 25 years ago. The storm outside seemed to mirror the turbulence in his thoughts, as pieces of a long-lost puzzle began shifting into new and startling patterns. Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Maya sat in the break room, her third coffee growing cold beside her laptop. She'd spent her entire break searching for information about abandoned babies at Fire Station Number 23 from 25 years ago. The old newspaper archives held fragments of stories, but nothing concrete. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Your mystery patient checked himself out against medical advice. Maya's heart sank. She'd hoped to ask him more questions during her next shift. Meanwhile, in his hidden office, Adrian's fingers flew across his keyboard. The nurse who'd saved his life, Maya Chen. Her background was both completely ordinary and suspiciously perfect. Foster homes, excellent academic record, spotless work history, but before age 3, nothing. As if she'd appeared out of thin air. The fire station records arrived, Ray said, placing a thick folder on Adrian's desk. "And you're not going to believe this." Adrian opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a yellowed incident report from a snowy night 25 years ago. A baby girl wrapped in a blanket with the initials LC embroidered in the corner. The same initials that had been on the blanket in the old family photo. Back at the hospital, Maya was checking on her regular patients when she overheard two administrators talking about a surprise audit from Chen Healthcare. Something about the company's name kept nagging at her. During her lunch break, she found herself researching the corporation's history. The company's public records showed it was founded 30 years ago by a couple named Lin and Chen. They had revolutionized emergency medical care before dying in what was officially called an accident. Their son had taken over, but remained mysteriously out of the public eye. Maya's throat tightened as she found an old photograph of the founding couple. The woman had a familiar crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist. In his office, Adrian studied the security footage from the hospital. Maya's movements, her mannerisms, they reminded him so much of their mother. But he needed to be certain. Too many times, he'd followed leads that led nowhere. Too many times, he'd let hope blind him to danger. The DNA test results are ready, Ray announced, entering with another folder. Adrian hesitated. From her coffee cup. Ray nodded. They both knew it wasn't entirely legal, but after 25 years of searching, Adrian couldn't wait any longer. Maya, unaware of being watched, continued her own investigation. The blanket she'd been found in. She kept it all these years. Taking it out of her locker, she traced the faded LC initials. A quick search revealed that Lin Chen was the name of the healthcare company's founder. Could it be just another coincidence? She pulled up more articles about the company's history. A tragic accident, a missing baby girl, a son who became a recluse. And there, in a grainy photo from a charity event 20 years ago, a teenage boy with a crescent birthmark on his wrist. The pieces were falling into place, but they painted a frightening picture. If she really was the missing Chen daughter, why had she been abandoned? What had really happened to her parents? Adrian stared at the DNA results, his vision blurring. A 99.9% match. The sister he'd spent 25 years searching for had saved his life in a snowy alley. But before he could process this revelation, his computer screen flashed red. Someone had breached his security systems. A message appeared. "We found her too. Time's running out, Mr. Chen." The same shadowy figures who'd torn their family apart 25 years ago had returned. And now, they knew about Maya too. In the hospital cafeteria, Maya's phone lit up with a strange text from an unknown number. "Ask your patient about the night of March 15th, 25 years ago. Ask him what really happened to the Chen family." The truth was finally surfacing, but it was about to put both their lives in danger. The hospital parking lot was unusually dark that evening. 3 of the security lights had mysteriously failed, leaving long shadows between the cars. Maya clutched her bag closer as she walked to her usual spot, the strange text message still playing on her mind. The sound of footsteps behind her made her walk faster. A car engine roared to life nearby. Too nearby. Headlights blazed, momentarily blinding her. Maya's nursing instincts screamed danger. She turned to run, but another set of headlights cut off her escape route. "Get in," a familiar voice commanded. Ray, the security guard from her mystery patient's room, had pulled up beside her in a black SUV. "They're coming for you." Through the back window, Maya saw 2 men in dark suits emerging from the other vehicle. The choice was made for her. She jumped into Ray's car. The tires squealed as they sped away, narrowly missing the men who'd been approaching. "What's happening?" Maya demanded, heart pounding. "Who were those men?" "The same people who killed your parents," Ray replied grimly, taking a sharp turn to avoid a pursuing vehicle. "The same ones who forced your brother into hiding." Maya's world tilted on its axis. "My brother. Adrian Chen. The man you saved in the alley." Ray's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "He's been searching for you for 25 years. Meanwhile, in his hidden office, Adrian was frantically erasing data trails. They'd found his sister faster than he'd expected, and now everything was falling apart. His computer screens showed security camera feeds from around the city, including one of Ray's cars speeding through traffic with Maya. His phone buzzed with a message. "Your parents' research dies with their children. It ends tonight. Adrian's fingers flew over his keyboard, initiating emergency protocols. The company's most sensitive files began transferring to secure servers. But it wasn't the research he was worried about. It was Maya. He'd just found her. And now she was in danger because of him. In the car, Maya struggled to process Ray's explanations. Their parent had developed revolutionary medical technology, something that could provide free emergency care to anyone, anywhere. But powerful people had wanted to bury it, to keep healthcare profitable. The night of the accident, baby Maya had been taken, not killed as reported, and abandoned at the fire station to cover their tracks. Adrian's been protecting the research all these years, Ray explained, taking another evasive turn. Keeping it hidden until he could find you and make it right. Suddenly, their car rocked with impact. Someone had found them. Through the side mirror, Maya saw 3 black vehicles in pursuit. Her nursing bag slid across the floor, spilling its contents. Among them, her old photograph fluttered out. Ray handed her a phone. "Call this number. Tell them Protocol Phoenix. It's our only chance." Maya's hands shook as she dialed. A familiar voice answered. The same voice from the hospital room, but stronger now, more commanding. "Maya," Adrian said, emotion breaking through his professional tone. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to be in danger." "The photograph," Maya said, picking it up from the car floor. "I have half of it." "I have the other half," Adrian replied. "I've had it all these years. But right now, we need to get you safe. Ray, take her to Safe House 3. Another impact rocked the car. Through the windshield, Maya saw a bridge ahead. Ray was driving straight for it, but construction barriers blocked the way. Behind them, the pursuing cars were gaining ground. "Do you trust me?" Ray asked, gripping the wheel tighter. Maya looked at the photograph in her hand, at the familiar crescent birthmark visible on the baby's wrist. She thought of the identical mark on her own wrist, and the one she'd seen on Adrian. "Some truths you feel in your bones." "Yes," she said firmly. Ray pressed a button on the dashboard. "Hold on tight." The car shot forward toward the blocked bridge as Maya's past and present collided in a screech of tires and the wail of pursuing sirens. The truth about her family was finally within reach, if they survived the night. The safe house turned out to be an old library building, its windows dark and dusty. Ray guided Maya through a hidden entrance in the basement, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The pursuit had ended at the bridge thanks to a risky maneuver that left Maya's heart still racing. "He's waiting upstairs," Ray said, gesturing toward a narrow staircase. "Everything you've been looking for, all the answers, they're up there." Maya's legs felt heavy as she climbed the stairs. Each step brought her closer to a truth she'd spent a lifetime searching for. The worn photograph felt warm in her pocket, like it was pulling her forward. The top floor was different from the rest of the building. Modern security screens lined one wall, showing various camera feeds from around the city. In the center of the room, surrounded by computers and files, stood Adrian Chen, her patient, her mystery, her brother. "You look just like her," Adrian said softly, holding out a photograph. "Our mother." Maya's hands trembled as she took it. The woman in the picture had her same curly hair, her same determined eyes, and there, on her wrist, the same crescent birthmark they all shared. "Why didn't you tell me in the hospital?" Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because the last 3 times I thought I'd found you, they hurt the people I approached." Adrian's face showed years of pain and guilt. "I had to be sure. I had to protect you." Suddenly, alarms blared through the building. Red lights flashed on the security screens. "They're here," Ray announced, rushing to check the monitors. "Show her," Adrian commanded, never taking his eyes off Maya. "Show her everything." Ray typed rapidly on a keyboard, and the screens filled with documents, news articles, and photographs. Maya saw her parents' faces, young and determined, presenting their medical breakthrough. She saw the threatening letters they'd received, the corporate meetings that had turned hostile. Our parents created something revolutionary, Adrian explained urgently. A system that could provide emergency medical care to anyone, anywhere, at minimal cost. But it would have disrupted the entire healthcare industry. Powerful people stood to lose billions. On the screens, Maya watched security footage from the night everything changed. Their family car forced off the road. Their father rushing to hide baby Maya at the fire station before returning to help their mother. The explosion that followed, carefully staged to look like an accident. You were safer not knowing, Adrian continued, his voice rough with emotion. I spent years building this company, gaining control of our parents' patents, waiting for the right moment to finish what they started. But I needed to find you first. You were always the missing piece. Tears streaked down Maya's face as she pulled out her half of the old photograph. Adrian reached into his pocket and produced his half. Together, they formed a complete picture, their family's last moment of peace. The building shook with a distant explosion. They're in the basement, Ray reported tensely. Why now? Maya asked, wiping her eyes. Why are they coming after us tonight? Adrian moved to a locked cabinet, quickly entering a code. Because tomorrow morning, I was planning to announce the release of our parents' technology. Everything is ready. The patents, the infrastructure, the public announcement. They must have discovered our plans. The cabinet opened to reveal a small safe. Inside sat a simple flash drive. 25 years of work, Adrian said, holding it up. Everything our parents died protecting. Everything I've been guarding until I found you. He held it out to Maya. It's your choice now. We can destroy it, disappear, live normal lives. Or we can finish what our parents started. Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. Through the security feeds, Maya saw figures in dark suits moving through the smoke, weapons drawn. In moments, they would reach the stairs. Maya looked at the flash drive, then at her newfound brother. She thought of her years as a nurse, of all the patients she'd seen struggle with medical bills, of her parents' dream of making healthcare accessible to everyone. The choice was clear. We finish it, she said firmly, taking the drive. Together. Adrian smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. In that moment, as sounds of approaching footsteps echoed from below, Maya finally felt complete. She had found not just her family, but her purpose. The next few hours passed in a blur of motion and split-second decisions. Ray had led them through a hidden passage behind the bookshelves. Just as their pursuers reached the top floor, they emerged blocks away, in an underground parking garage where a backup vehicle waited. Now, as dawn broke over the city, Maya sat in a secure penthouse apartment, watching her brother work. Adrian's fingers flew across multiple keyboards, his face illuminated by screen light as he initiated their parents' long-dormant protocols. The DNA results are being uploaded to every major news outlet, he explained, not looking up, along with proof of the corporate sabotage from 25 years ago. They can't silence us if the whole world is watching. Maya rolled the flash drive between her fingers, still processing everything. All those years in foster care, I used to imagine finding my family. But I never imagined this. She gestured at the high-tech setup around them. I never stopped looking, Adrian said softly, finally pausing his work. Every birthday, every holiday. I wondered where you were, if you were safe, if you were happy. A notification popped up on one of the screens. The first news story had broken. Lost Chen Harris found. Corporate conspiracy exposed. Another screen showed their parents' photograph, side by side with recent pictures of Maya and Adrian. The resemblance was undeniable. Mrs. Rodriguez just texted, Maya said, checking her phone. The hospital's going crazy. Apparently, I'm trending on social media. She laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. I should probably call in sick today. Adrian's lips twitched. I think you have a good excuse. Ray entered the room with 3 cups of coffee and a tablet. The board members are panicking. 4 have already resigned. And look at this. He handed the tablet to Adrian, who smiled for the second time that day. What is it? Maya asked, moving to look over his shoulder. Stock prices for the major healthcare companies that tried to bury our parents' research. They're in free fall. Adrian's smile faded slightly. They'll try to fight back. Legal battles, smear campaigns. It won't be easy. Maya picked up one of the coffee cups, inhaling the familiar scent. It grounded her, reminded her of early morning hospital shifts, and the simple certainty of helping others. Tell me about them, she said quietly. Our parents. What were they like? Adrian's eyes softened. He reached into his desk and pulled out a worn photo album, one of the few things he'd salvaged from their old home. Mom was brilliant but humble. She could solve complex medical problems in minutes, but she'd spend hours helping Dad with his crossword puzzles just because she loved seeing him smile. Together, they flipped through pages of their forgotten childhood. Each photo brought a new story, a new piece of their shared history sliding into place. Maya learned that she'd taken her first steps in their father's research lab, that their mother used to sing old Chinese lullabies when they couldn't sleep. Dad was the dreamer, Adrian continued, pointing to a picture of their father presenting at a medical conference. Mom figured out the technical details, but it was his vision. Healthcare that would be truly universal, truly fair. A message flashed across the screens. Their parents' technology patents had been officially reinstated under both their names. Maya Chen and Adrian Chen, co-owners of their family's legacy. What happens now? Maya asked, looking at their joined reflection in the window. The morning sun cast long shadows behind them, but for the first time, she felt like she was stepping into the light. Now, Adrian said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, we honor their memory. We finish their work. And most importantly, he smiled that rare, real smile again. We make up for 25 years of missed family dinners. Maya felt tears welling up again. But these were different from before. These were tears of homecoming, of pieces finally falling into place. Through the window, she could see the hospital where she worked, where fate had brought her face to face with her long-lost brother. I'd like that, she said softly. All of it. The sun rose higher over Chicago, casting golden light across the city they would help reshape. On the desk between them lay their parents' torn photograph, finally made whole again, just like their family. 1 year later, the Chen Medical Center opened its doors in downtown Chicago. The building stood tall and proud, its glass walls reflecting the morning sun. Above the entrance, a simple plaque read, "In memory of Lynn and David Chen, making healthcare accessible to all." Maya stood in the lobby, watching as the first patients arrived. She'd insisted on keeping her job as an emergency room nurse, even though she could have easily retired. I didn't become a nurse for the money, she told Adrian. I did it to help people. Her brother had understood completely. Now, instead of hiding in a secret office, Adrian worked openly as the company's CEO, his face known to the world. The security screens in his new office showed something different these days, not threat assessments, but data from hospitals across the country implementing their parents' healthcare system. The first free clinic opens in Detroit next week, Ray announced, approaching with his usual coffee delivery. He'd stayed on as head of security, though his job now involved protecting their parents' legacy rather than keeping secrets. And the waiting list for the medical training program is getting longer. Maya smiled, adjusting her nurse's badge. The same crescent birthmark that had helped reunite her with her brother had become a symbol of hope. Their family's mark now represented accessible healthcare for all. Dr. Rodriguez wanted you to see this, Ray continued, handing her a tablet. On the screen, a young girl received emergency care at a rural clinic powered by Chen technology. The girl's mother cried tears of joy when told there would be no bill. Mom and Dad would have loved this, Adrian said, joining them in the lobby. He looked different now, more relaxed, the weight of secrecy lifted from his shoulders. Though Dad would probably still be tinkering with the system, trying to make it even better. Maya laughed, remembering the stories Adrian had shared about their father's endless quest for improvement. And Mom would be telling him it's perfect as it is, while secretly making her own upgrades. The lobby grew busier as more people arrived. Maya recognized some faces from her old emergency room. Patients who'd once struggled with medical bills, now receiving the care they needed without fear of bankruptcy. A small girl tugged at Maya's scrubs, looking up with curious eyes. "Are you the nurse from the story? The one who found her family?" Maya knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, that's me. And you know what? Sometimes the best families are the ones we build along the way." She glanced at the girl's worn clothes and tired mother. "Why don't we get you both checked out?" Later that evening, Maya and Adrian sat in what had once been their parents' research lab, now restored and modernized. On the wall hung 2 photographs. The old family picture they'd pieced together, and a new one taken at the center's opening ceremony. "Sometimes I still can't believe it," Maya said, looking out over the city lights. "A year ago, I was just a nurse with a mysterious birthmark and half a photograph. Now you're still a nurse," Adrian finished. "Just one who happened to help change the healthcare system and find her long-lost brother in the process." He smiled. "Though I still think you should carry an EpiPen, just in case you find any more CEOs having allergic reactions in alleys." A notification popped up on Adrian's phone. Another hospital had successfully implemented their parent system. Somewhere in the city, another family was receiving care without fear of crushing debt. "We should visit fire station number 23, Maya suggested suddenly. "Thank them. Let them know how the story ended." Adrian nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Maybe help them set up a proper medical response unit while we're at it." Through the lab windows, they could see their parents' dream taking shape across the city skyline. The Chen family legacy had transformed from a closely guarded secret into a beacon of hope, touching lives far beyond what either of them had imagined. Maya touched the birthmark on her wrist, thinking of all the twists of fate that had led to this moment. A snowy night, a chance encounter, a shared mark that had brought a family back together. Sometimes, she realized, the best endings were actually new beginnings.